So I'm here today with our partners Alex and Marcel from Fizik and Gebiomized. Alex is the product manager, and Marcel is the CEO of Gebiomized Group. So we've been working with Fizik for a few years now. Can you talk through how you came to bring a 3D printed saddle to market, and what that custom saddle version offers as well?
Yeah, so basically, we started working with carbon like 5 years ago, when in our company we wanted to find some different solution on how to provide comfort for our cyclists, for our consumers. So we were looking for alternative, different technology, different materials, and we ran into carbon, and we thought, okay, we might give them a try and see if the material works, if the process works. So we start sampling the padding, and we tried with several athletes. I tried them by myself, and to look something more that was working for different padding application. And the first thing that I realized when working with carbon is that on that specific padding, we could create different multiple zones that makes the comfort on the saddle much easier to achieve compared to any traditional foam or any traditional material that it has been used for many, many years. So that's why we started doing that, and then from this little step, we introduced the very first saddle with a 3D printed padding, and now we have a full range of options, mainly because the market is requiring that technology and the fact that it's really working in terms of comfort and performance.
Yeah, and thank you. And what did bringing a custom version mean to your brand, and how does that custom offering benefit riders?
Yeah, if you think about the saddle on the bicycle, it's the most complex component on it, because you can create your bicycle and achieving the performance through the different components, drivetrains, according to your ability, I would say. But in terms of comfort, it's something that is very critical. I know a lot of people that gave up cycling because of the saddle soles, because they might be had an injury in the past, so the balance between left and right is not right. And even if with a 3D printed padding, standard one, you cannot be so precise as a custom saddle. So with that process, we are not fulfilling all the needs of the riders. Through a pressure mapping, we really know what's happening on the saddle itself, and then we can create a specific padding for achieving the comfort on every bicycle type, every kind of riders, any ability. Everything is possible with the customization.
So Gebiomized has over 20 years of experience in the saddle market. Can you talk about your dynamic pressure mapping system and how that integrates into the process?
Yeah, so our dynamic pressure mapping system, as you say, is dynamic. So it takes data of various sensors over time with 200 frames per second, and we use this data for a long time to do bike fitting. So evaluate a rider's position on a bike, and to integrate this into a bike fit to the perfect setup of a bike. Also use this for product development, because you see the interaction between rider and product very easily. You see the points where you have high pressure. You can objectify some subjective inputs. And we use this, for example, with partners like Fizik to look at their product range and look at the saddle standard lines and how do they interact. And for the customized saddles, we took all this knowledge out of the 20 years with the different parameters you see, like the COP, how does the rider pelvis move over the saddle, over the movement, and is it symmetric, asymmetric, does it more low than the front, more low than the back. We use this to, as well as the pressure input itself, to put it in a custom lattice and create a customized saddle.
Yeah, and this customized lattice is, out of the pressure mapping system. And then can you talk through how that then goes into creating a lattice and integrating all of the systems together?
Yeah, I think it was a hard work. You done a part of the work already, because you did it for long years already, printing saddles. And what we then did first is to identify the key pressure points, the key parameters we have to use. And we don't only use the sole pressure mapping. So we use the different parameters, as I said, the COP, the basic pressure mapping over time, different positions. We did a lot of studies with physics saddles, with riders, to see how different parameters change the interaction. And out of these studies, with this knowledge of physics and carbon, with the printing and our algorithms, we use the base pressure mapping over different positions integrate that into one, and then we use some other algorithms which take into account the COP, for example. So we create, let's say, a custom pressure mapping, different pressure mapping out of it, and integrate this into our platform where the order is created. And then fizik basically grabs this data and puts it into the carbon engine software to really print the saddles with a good standardized process as well, I guess.
So I think that for fizik, the main goal in this project was to link the knowledge of GBMized and the output coming from the printer from Carbon. So we did need something like GBMized was doing, because the pressure mapping for us was the most important part in achieving the good data that we needed to translate to get the best saddle out of the pressure mapping. But then we had to create something that wasn't available at the time, because how we can translate the pressure mapping into a file that we can use on the Carbon machine. And working with them was, I would say, for me was difficult at the beginning, because I didn't know anything about 3D printing until 3-4 years ago. And I didn't know anything about pressure mapping. So for me was a lot of knowledge coming into the place. But everything was going smoothly because of the collaborative team that has been created between the three company eventually. And now the project has been released, and everything is doing smoothly once again.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's really unique about the process is the output from the GBMized system automatically creates automatically goes to our API system. A custom lattice is generated without human interaction, and then it's pushed to the printer, and then it's printed. And that whole process doesn't require any human intervention, and it enables us to really bring mass customization to the market. So, Alex, can you talk through what the customer experience looks like for getting fitted and purchasing one of these saddles?
Yeah, so basically we create a process, I would say a service that has been designed to be very easy to use for the dealers, to the bike fitters, and for the user itself. So how it works basically. We ask to the final consumers that want to get the custom saddle to go to our point of sales. Right now there are 25 globally, soon is going to be 75 in January. So they bring their own bicycle on a trainer. The dealer, the bike fitter, plays the pressure mapping mat over the saddle, any saddle that the rider is currently using. We can analyze on all the riding position of the cyclist on the bicycle, the pressure mapping created by those riding position. Through the algorithm that GBMized created, we can analyze all those data, parameters, pressure hotspots, how the cyclist is sitting on the saddle, their balance between left and right, and eventually we can recommend which is the best fizik saddle shape for this specific customer on that specific bicycle. After that, we replace the saddle of the customer with one of our saddles. And it's called baseline saddle because according to that saddle, we do another pressure mapping on all riding position. And those are the data that we needed to use to create the custom padding, to generate the padding, 3D printed padding. Everything is done by an application that we developed. So it's connected by Bluetooth on this pressure mapping that GBMized is creating. And through the application, we send all the data to our server in Italy, and then automatically goes to the process, print the padding, goes to the assembly line, and ship back to the final customer or to the dealer if the customer decide to have the saddle adjusted by the dealer itself. So it's very easy, like a process. So it takes about 20 minutes, 40 minutes, but still the complexity behind the application and the system is very high. But we want to create a smooth process where there's no human error involved. Everything is done automatically by the application and then eventually by the software that Carbon create and that we use to generate the padding.
And I think what's unique about this process as well is when the customer receives the saddle, they're able to go back to the store and check that the pressure measurements.
Exactly. So basically, we don't ask the customer to trust us, because inside the app there's a tool where you can compare the saddle that you receive with the initial saddle that you came into the shop. So basically, we analyze the two pressure mapping, and eventually we can see if there's been a reduction of pressure hotspots, if the balance between left and right has been improved, even the surface of the area, because if you use more surface on the area, you have more surface to widespread pressure. So if those parameters are positive, it means that the custom saddle that we produce was good enough to improve the comfort of the rider. It might happen that for some reason, some of those parameters are negative. In that case, we replace the saddle, or we ask the dealer for free to redo the pressure mapping, and we redo the saddle for free, basically. So,
yeah, I think that really speaks to Fizik's confidence in this process and delivering a superior product to customers. So now that this has been on the market for a few months, do you have any testimonials or rider feedback that you'd like to share?
So yes, we started the market in June this year, and we have already printed more than 300 saddles, and we already have some returning customers. There have been some customers that had asked us to reprint a saddle for a second bike, a third bicycle, so they were very happy with the saddle itself. Also, they came with a different bicycle, because you know that different bicycle geometry require different saddles eventually. So they were so happy with the first one that they decided to bring to the shop other bicycle to get the custom saddle yet. Also, initially, during the beginning of the year, we tested the process with a professional team. For the whole year, we tested the saddle with 2 pro riders at the team Visma. Again, 2 riders that had some important issue to find the right saddle, to find the right spots, to place the saddle in the correct way, I would say. So with those 2 riders, we work also to find out what are the parameters for professional riders, because pro riders actually need some different support than the amateur or the standard cyclist. Together with them, we also learn quite a lot, and I think that next year there will be more professional riders cycling and pedaling on a custom saddles.
Yeah. Great. So now I'll open up the floor for any questions.
And I have a microphone if anybody would like it to ask a question. How long would an average saddle last in terms of miles ridden? Once you have it all fitted and ready to go, how long are you going to keep that saddle for?
So it's very difficult to answer, because there are a lot of aspects to take into consideration, not only the amount of time that the rider is spending on the saddle, but how the bicycle is stored, eventually the weather that you run into, how the bicycle has been cleaned, if any solvents has been used on the saddle itself. But I would say that a saddle with a 3D printed padding lasts way longer than any traditional foam, because traditional foam, for example, compress during the use after hours spent on the saddle, and eventually it doesn't return to the same volume as the original foam saddle, while the mechanical properties of a 3D printed padding are more consistent over the time. So it might happen that you might want to change the saddle because a new version, a new model has been released, then because the saddle wears out and you need to replace it.
And I presume if you have a new bike with slightly different geometry and you're riding in a slightly different position, you probably want to go and have the mapping done again and get a new saddle for that.
Exactly, because I remember one of the stories that I usually mention is the fact that 20 years ago, when I did my first bike fitting, I remember the bike fitter told me that, okay, now you get the saddle that works for you, use it on every bicycle that you have. But it's wrong, because different geometry create different posture on the bicycle, and then you need different shape, different foam, different width of the saddle itself. So that's more important than having a saddle for every bicycle that you have.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the presentation. You can find out more on the Carbon booth, which is just down here. So nice and close. 11.1 D22. Close. Thank you very much.
You.